What's going on, everyone? This is Sherry, and you are tuned into She Said What She Said, the podcast where we interview badass women in the sports world and beyond. And so we have beyond this evening, but really excited. This is one of Phaedra and mine's favorite topics, something that we're both very passionate about. So, shoot, I said her name before I even gave her introduction. So let's bring in my fabulous co-host for the month of May, Miss Faye. Hey.
Hey, what's
I started
happening?
doing the intro without
I know. I was like, she said my name.
I know. I'm not supposed to do it. No one's supposed to know who my
It's okay.
co-host is until like.
That's all right. We'll forgive.
You're still here. Hi.
I'm here. Hi. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
Good. Sorry on the late, getting I had some, I'm not home and I had some technical difficulties with the internet. So it took a second to get on.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
If this were any closer, you would see I have a nice little speckle of dirt on my face because I was trying to do some planting on my balcony before we got started. And I think I wiped my head with
it doesn't show. It's like your blotting powder.
Yeah. And I was looking like, what the hell? I'm like, yep.
Nice.
I just rolled. I did change my shirt, but yeah, I don't even know why I wear gardening gloves.
Just come all dirty, be like, yeah, I was gardening. It was great.
Yeah, I was like, it's hot out here. I am gonna do this later. Yeah, my poor plants, they're just waiting to be planted, but they can wait.
Keep them extra watered. Mine in the back have shade, and all the cicadas are on them, and I'm like, I'm in the burbs, and we are just I walked into my house, and they're all over my railing, and I want to punch them all in the face. Their blind little faces. No, I'm coming to peace with this whole these things, and but I've been wearing a cap when I walk out the house every morning because I don't want them stuck in my hair.
I know they'll be in the city soon enough, so I always get them in uptown, so I know they're coming. But so let's go to the topic of hand. Yeah. So as I was saying, this is probably one of our favorite topics here. Women in the work world, women and minorities places that are normally ran by straight white men. We all know how I feel about straight white men. No offense to my dad, he's great.
Oh, it's very
But outside of this, I do work in corporate America, and it's I definitely judge a company by how many straight white men I see that represents them. And one of my pain points before, and I know our guest back there is probably, I want to say something about this, is I hate to see when the only person in your C-suite that is not a straight white man is your chief diversity officer.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
No. Nope.
Yeah.
No. Nope. Hate it.
You're like, oh, we're moving forward. No.
Are we? So yeah, I will say, I work for Fortune 100, 200 company. The person that is the head honcho in our Chicago office is a woman. So,
very cool.
It's corporate maybe is a little different, but our headquarters and this and that. But the Chicago office, we're Gucci.
There you go.
So I'm and that's one of the things why I stay where I stay is because you see people that look like yourself, that look like other people, that look like anyone else, being able to get where they need to go. But I will let you, I'll get off my soapbox, and I will let you introduce our guest for this evening.
All right. Well, so I actually met our guest Gloria. It's just the friend of a client of mine, and I began talking to her a little bit more. And first of all, she's fiery as fuck. I just love this little lady. And but anyways, I digress. She was the former president and CEO of Chicago United, and has also she's gone. It's just all these accolades. It's been amazing. And then just for being recognizing the and being there for the multiracial leadership in business. And so, I mean, we can go on and on. There's a whole thing about her, but I just want her on so we can talk to her. This is Gloria Castillo, y'all. Let's give it up.
Hey, hello, Gloria.
Hello, Sherry and Phaedra. This is great. I'm so glad to join you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, as you heard, I already got on my soapbox, which I'm sure is probably something that you've talked about a little bit in your career, eh?
I have indeed. As a matter of fact, it's interesting because I often tell people, if you want to attract great talent, take a look at your C-suite, take a look at your board of directors and see who you're going to attract, because people look at that before they take a job. They want to know, are you just saying that you believe in diversity? Are you saying that you actually develop talent through the ranks? Or are you showing that you do it? And if you don't, you're not going to attract the talent that you want. And Sherry, you said it perfectly. You get tired of seeing that, and so do a whole bunch of other folks.
I read somewhere that you needed to have at least 3 people in a room that were not part of the majority for them to feel comfortable to speak out. Is that kind of what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the research shows that. And so let me just kind of give folks a little sense of what that my background is, so they get a feeling.
Yeah, I just jumped right into a topic. Gosh darn it.
I'm really good at that because I'll go right with you.
It's one of my topics that I really am passionate about. So I was like, let's get in. But no, tell us about your whole resume, how you got into it.
I don't know if you want my whole resume because it's like, I've been on the earth for a while, so it's like a long resume. But we'll go to Chicago United. So Chicago United is a corporate membership organization that was founded following Dr. King's assassination. And it was really intended to ensure that people of color, and in particular at that moment, that Black people would be allowed to take jobs in corporate America. And I say that in a really meaningful way, because it was the time when you could have newspaper ads for jobs, and there were men and women, and there were jobs in which Blacks were allowed to apply and Blacks were not allowed to apply. So when you think back at that time, an organization that was founded by faith leaders, community leaders, and corporate CEOs to address the ability for people of color to actually work inside of the corporate headquarters. And I'm not talking about like in the warehouses. Right. So it was kind of a very unique organization, remains a unique organization around the country, because to be a corporate member of Chicago United, when I joined the organization and when I left the organization, it required that the CEO was the member. So you couldn't send your chief diversity officer to be the.
That's a new thing.
And often the chief diversity officer in most corporations, that person is actually not a C-suite member. They generally don't report to the CEO. They generally report to the chief human resource officer. So I'm really careful about the chief diversity officer role, and I often ask, do they report directly to the CEO? I would say over 90% of the time they do not. So it's a really interesting role with that title.
Yikes.
And very often they don't have very many direct reports. Some organizations have very robust diversity organizations, like they have people reporting up to this chief diversity officer. In some of them, they have a couple of assistants and not really much else. So it's a complicated area, and that's why we maintained the requirement of a CEO to be involved. All of that to say, I've really watched organizations develop over a period of 16 years, develop how they advance women, people of color, people of all diverse backgrounds. I mean, all of us have so many intersectional areas, right? We see there's the stuff that you see, like how we look, our identity that's visible to others, but there's so many other aspects of us. So it is something that I've paid a lot of attention to over my lifetime. And it started before Chicago United, but that was the core. So I worked with a lot of corporations that were headquartered in Chicago and those that were not headquartered here, but like your corporation that has a big presence. I'm not sure who you work for, but that have a large presence here. And the reality is, and we're seeing this now, there are some organizations that are really committed from the top down, and they're trying to build it into the DNA of the organization so that no matter who leads the organization, the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is still there. But we've also seen that since the Supreme Court decision that really damaged affirmative action and these programs, there are companies that always said that they were committed, but now that the Supreme Court has given them back door, they're taking the back door and moving away from it. So it is an area that we should all be paying attention to.
Absolutely. I do notice, where and I'm in the finance world, not always known for being the best of this, but I do know that at least in my office in Chicago, there is definitely a push to try to get them from like the intern level, right? Because you can't just pull in someone as a manager that's a Black woman that's never, worked in the industry before, right? You want to get people that are young, thinking about like, where do I go, kind of finance type world in college, you know what I mean? And bring them up as an intern, and then you can go up and up and up. And I feel like in the last few years compared to 10 years ago, like you're seeing it, right? The interns just aren't white men that had a connection to the company. But I never even thought about the affirmative action ruling affecting the workplace. I was only really thinking about that affecting college admissions.
No, it's actually had a very chilling effect inside of corporations, and those of us who are in those circles are seeing it. Departments that are being reduced, commitments that where they were making internal commitments, you see them kind of moving away. So those of us in the space are really watching that kind of which corporations are really holding true and which are not.
Do you have like a blacklist of like, do you publish that information? Yeah. Does someone publish that information? Is it kind of word of mouth or?
Yeah, that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. I think the state of Illinois did a really good thing because the state of Illinois now requires that corporations report the diversity on their boards of directors. And so that's a really progressive thing to do. When I was leading Chicago United, we would produce a report on a biannual basis, like looking at people of color in the various ranks in mid-level management and senior level management on boards of directors. And to get that information was so difficult. And to even get like the demographics of their board of directors, which you would think they would be proud of, it was very hard to get. So that was a very progressive thing in the state of Illinois to even bring that up so that we could actually look at the boards of directors of corporations and see, are they really representative of their customer base? And so, so that's something that you can get information on, but for the most part, it's pretty hard to figure out, what the stance is. You can read somebody's website and their DEI statements. And what I always tell people to do is, read them and think about how squishy they are, right? Read them really critically. Are they using really squishy language that doesn't tell you how they're committed, what actions they're taking? If they say, we believe in, equity and equality, and we believe in these things, and they don't tell you, and we take this stand, and we take these actions, that it's really squishy. They're really not doing anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I find being since I was 18 years old. I mean, I've been in the gym world. I've, personal training, then massage. So I've always been running my own show. I've not, even when I work for someone, I'm like, no. And I'm like, I'll just do it by myself. And I'm not the best business person, let's put it that way. But I have found over the years, even at, knowing people in like the university world and seeing when it comes to sports at universities, and now they're finally including these inclusion and diversity people and appointing different people. And it's kind of funny because it's like, you are a college university and you are just starting this, and so many colleges are starting this, but it's kind of like, I feel in that, in that sense of business, because, I'm not corporate, I've just seen it in the little worlds that I've been in. And it's like mad rush for something that I feel is just, it's kind of cringy. You're just like, shouldn't have this always been here? Shouldn't we have always been like understanding and like thinking about everyone? And so now in the past 4 years, we're just going to create, and in hospitals too. I have a client of mine who works at a hospital, and she's part of, she's a Black woman, and she's part of it. And of her, team's diversity and inclusion. And it's like, and I'm not putting it down because it's necessary. I feel like, okay, this is great. It's kind of funny that it just hasn't, or not funny, but sad. It's just been something that this is coming up now for our future, but just so like late.
It is late. And what's sad about that coming so late to universities, particularly in the sports arena, is they've depended on diverse students, across the board to perform well. And so if there's anywhere where you can point to the fact that bringing diversity to sports, I know we use the Jackie Robinson, analogy all the time, but baseball got better. It got better. It got stronger. It was more competitive. And that's been true across the board. So it is really troubling that now they're saying we should do that. And I'll say, I think it's a saying that I always say. The culture of an organization never leaves the CEO's desk. So whether you're the CEO of a large corporation, or the CEO of your own business, or of a university, or a healthcare organization, the culture of that organization, no one can take responsibility for that other than the CEO. They set the tone, they set the direction, and everyone is going to follow that.
Yeah.
So when you look at an organization that is now just saying, oh, I think we'll get on the bandwagon, and you're saying, where were you before? Either you've had a change of leadership, or you've had some kind of awakening, or you've been forced into an awakening. And you kind of got to look at, what happened there, because that culture of inclusion on every level is based on that senior leader's direction.
So Kristen is saying, and she's one of our co-hosts for our Plunked baseball show. Hey girl, go Cubs go. This is a great conversation, and something that I'm worried about as I'm fighting for my position during a painful transition. Ooh, I didn't know that. Sorry, hon. Leaders aren't following the DEI chief's lead. God, that's hard, right? Because you have one organization that's doing something great, one that's not. Gloria, what type of advice would you give someone like Kristen that, isn't sure like where their role might be, during transitions of their workplace?
That's a really hard spot to be in, because during a transition, you don't know where people are going to land. I will say this, that most people who fight inclusion look at it as a zero-sum game. So if Kristen is promoted or she retains her job, they're thinking about, what price do I pay for Kristen to stay there? And kind of understanding that that's where people are coming from, they're really looking at, in what way will this affect me? And if they think that they win because Kristen is there, they'll want her there. If they think they are going to somehow lose because Kristen is there, they will not want her there. And so being kind of keyed into what's their motivation so that you can subtly speak to it. I always say that, people in a well-meaning way, very often senior leadership will say to mid management, this is what I believe in. I really want our organization to be inclusive. I want people to feel like they belong here. I want a diverse staff, and I want all of the good things that come with that. And so, Sherry, I want you to take Gloria under your wing and help her be successful. And you're like, I have got a million things to do. And so now, what's my role? Do I get my job done, or do I help Gloria be successful? Because my bonus depends on me doing my job. And so if I take time away from that and I make Gloria successful, what happens when I go home and see my spouse and they say, where's the bonus? And you're like, hey, I didn't get a bonus this year because I didn't hit my numbers, but Gloria's doing great. Like, that's how people think about it. And so it really does help to think about the environment that you're in and the people that you're dealing with and what's motivating them. And I don't have an answer for Kristen because every situation is different, but I can say that is very often when people are pushing back, they're thinking zero sum. Like if she succeeds, they won't.
Got it.
Interesting.
Whereas you want it to be, if I succeed, you succeed too, right? If I succeed, we all succeed. That should be, and she just say thank you. But that is like a toxic workplace culture, right? When everything's me.
Yes.
Because you want to make sure that you work in a place that encourages mentorship, encourages development, and acknowledges people that go out of their way to help others within the organization, even if it's not their job description.
And if you think about basically in organizations, we very often work in teams, right?
Yep.
So when the team is really successful, the team leader gets all kinds of kudos and they usually get promoted.
Yeah.
So what is helpful for team leaders to know is the better that they are at inclusion, the better that they are at making people feel like they belong, the better they are at bringing out the best as individuals on the team, the more likely the team is going to succeed, and the more likely they're going to be promoted. I mean, that's the reality. When you look at high functioning diverse teams, they kill it. And all the research points to it. I mean, it's not like just me saying that. All the research points to the fact that when you have diverse teams that are high functioning, they outperform homogeneous teams over and over and over again. And that's the hard part for people to believe until they've experienced it.
It's really true.
Yeah, I think that, Sherry, what you were saying too, well, both of you, about in the workplace, having teams, it's like a real estate. Like we were talking to Carrie DeLittle one day, and this is, I feel, as to why these different groups outside of the business, where it's, you have groups of real estate agents and these groups that get together to share stories, whether it's women or a mixture of women and men. But I'm hearing a lot of women's group, especially. They're diverse, they're cheering everybody on. And a lot of the women we've had on in the past few months have been talking about, these places that they can go. And although everyone might be a real estate agent, there's this, hey, like, yes, I was, I'm pregnant now, but you were pregnant, a year ago. And so how did you manage? And there's just so much uplifting and support, and everybody wants to see everybody achieve and be successful. And I think that things like that are helping to kind of even out some of that crap you have to deal with in the corporate world, that there's these stories being shared And you should, like, you're sharing your story now, like this podcast is we're sharing stories. So someone that listens is going to be like, oh, I never thought about that. I mean, I know I'm getting a lot of that out of this, but yeah. And so that does not account, or that doesn't take precedent over changing in the workplace. But it's nice to know that, we can keep moving up and forward, even outside in the same industries.
Yeah. You know what? I will tell you that, sometimes you hear how women don't help each other and women are fighting each other. And I'm sure that it happens, and that's part of the reality that people face. My experience has been one in which I've had a lot of support from women.
Absolutely.
And when in my entrepreneurial world, when I was an entrepreneur before I went to Chicago United in a family business, the women who helped me the most were Black women. And there was always this, there's, this infighting between Black women and Latinas. And that was never my experience. My experience was, hey, we did this piece and we know how this part works. Here, let me help you out. I've always had great experience with other women, white women, Black women, Asian women. Like, once we get together and start sharing, like you said, Phaedra, you're like, I was pregnant and during that time, and now here's how you might maneuver this piece. That happens, and it is so incredibly valuable. And it's really important that we lift that up. And I'll say that in a corporate setting, it's really important that we listen for when other women are being diminished.
Yes.
And then step up. When Sherry says, hey, I have a great idea in a meeting, and she says what her idea is, and then Tom says, yeah, I had this idea, and he says exactly what Sherry just says, and everybody goes, oh yeah, Tom, what a great idea. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And we all know it's like this weird little microaggression thing that happens.
Yep.
And so as women, I think it's really important for us to say, oh, Tom, that is a really good idea. I'm glad you built on what Sherry so that you're not insulting him.
Right.
You are acknowledging that Sherry opened the conversation with an idea. And we all need to do that for each other. We have to be conscious of it. We have to really think about it. And we need to listen for when those things happen, and then really think through, now, how do I support Sherry in this moment? Like, do it in a really subtle way that nobody could be mad about, that you don't have to, nobody's going to jump up and, be upset. But hey, Tom, that's really great how you built on Sherry's idea.
Yeah. Have you gone and talked to companies or anything about this kind of stuff? Is this something that you've gotten into, or is this just ideas in your head that you've done yourself?
No. I mean, I've certainly done speaking on this, but at Chicago United, we had diversity officer roundtables. We'd bring the chief diversity officers together and talk about these kinds of issues, of helping them think through how do they present these opportunities to people inside of their staff. And we actually had CEO council roundtables where we brought CEOs together, and only CEOs in a room, and had these kinds of conversations.
Wow. What does that look like? Is it a diverse CEO, or is it pretty much not?
Probably a bunch of straight white men.
It's like in the Barbie movie where it's all
straight white men. Hey, Frank. Frank is one of my favorite straight white men. Hey, bro.
Hi, Frank.
Because I am thinking the Barbie.
It started out mostly, straight white men, and then over time it became more diverse. And I will say this, some of the most amazing advocates for diversity, equity, and inclusion have been, if you walked in a room and you saw a bunch of straight white men and you said, oh, they're all the same. They're not. Some of the greatest advocates. When I started at Chicago United, Jim Skinner was the CEO of McDonald's. And an unbelievable champion for women and for African Americans and for Latinos. I mean, at that time, that was he was really clear about that. And, you know, the CEO that followed Jim Skinner was Don Thompson, the first Black CEO of McDonald's.
Right.
So, you know, I'm always careful not to, you know, Frank, I've never seen you, but, you know, but some of our greatest allies and our greatest allies, right?
Absolutely.
And people who have been so effective at creating change. So we want to make sure not to like leave them out of the picture because they can really help us out.
No. You know, Gloria, when you were talking about speaking up for women, you know, when you're in the room, years ago, there was a manager who was talking about the different people he was interviewing for a new role. And he was saying how great all of his candidates were. And he described one of the women as being sweet. And I was like, would you ever describe a man as being sweet? And he was like, it was just kind of like that. It was like, that's not like, let's not use gender terminology to describe a job candidate. I don't know if it did any more than one year out the other, but I certainly never heard that person use gender terminology like that around me again. And it wasn't even in like a rude way, but it was just like, hey, because you were talking about how great she was, but BTW, if you're not going to use that term to describe a man, probably don't use it to describe a woman in the workplace.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
But I also have to feel secure with my job to say that to somebody else too. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people do feel not, you know, in a place where you can, but if it's someone that you know well, that, you know, for me, it was like someone that I felt very comfortable with, that I felt like I could provide that feedback to them and not worry about any type of, you know, professional implications either. Just kind of, hey, FYI, you know.
Yeah. And actually, I think that's really helpful because we all have that level of unconscious bias that plays out in that way, right? And that bias isn't always negative, you know, like I'm biased for Chicago. I'm, you know, that's a bias that I have. If you ask me what's a great city, I'm going to say Chicago. It's because it's a bias. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it does help if somebody goes, hey, every single time somebody asks you about a great city, it's Chicago. Have you ever thought about Paris? You know, like
right. So being, and I didn't mention this because this was on the thing. I liked, you know, we've done so much with Chicago United, and I know on your underneath your name, it's We Rise Together. And I failed to mention that in the beginning because I've talked to you so much about the things with Chicago United, and we've had many conversations about that. So will you talk about that transition from, you know, now we can move forward from Chicago United, because that was huge, and we could spend probably the rest of this time talking about it and all that's included. But I think we'd all like to hear too some steps then and getting into We Rise Together.
Yeah. Well, you know,
and I just realized I put the wrong verbiage on the title, so I'm going to change that. I put Together We Rise.
I like it both. They both sound great.
Yeah, there's an organization in California called Together We Rise, so we had to make sure that we didn't say Together We Rise. But We Rise Together was a really important opportunity for me. So I had stepped down from Chicago United after 16 years because I really thought it was time for someone else to take that role and, you know, bring some fresh thinking to the organization. And I felt that I had left it in really good condition, so it was a good time to move on. And I was only going to do some writing and speaking, and I had no intention of taking another 9-to-5 job. But the Chicago Community, I was on the board of trustees of the Chicago Community Trust at the time, and COVID hit. And we raised, along with other funders across the city, $35 million in an emergency fund, a rapid response fund to help people manage through COVID. And as we did that, we realized that the communities that were being hit hardest by COVID, the mortality rates, the infection rates, the joblessness, were the Black and Latinx communities that had already been left behind in the last recession and over the last 60 years in Chicago of disinvestment. So we made a conscious decision that we were going to raise money and invest in those communities that were hardest hit by COVID and had long history of disinvestment. So we raised $50 million, and in a very short period of time, I was there, over 2 years, but in philanthropy, 2 years is a nanosecond. To raise that kind of money and deploy that kind of money. And we developed, so my job was to develop the strategy, put together the team, put together the grant-making processes, put together the grant-making advisors, the evaluation process, how we measure success, and get all of those pieces together and rolling. So we were really flying the plane at the same time that we were building it. And so we were able to, by the time I left, we had invested over $35 million in communities of color, in mostly brick and mortar projects. And what we thought about was, for people to come out of COVID and feel like their community was really being paid attention to, they needed to see something physical in their community, right? You wanted to see a building that had been abandoned renovated. You wanted to see activities and programs going on where kids in the neighborhood would have sporting activities. You wanted to see corners lit up again, so that people would have hope coming out of COVID, that really people did care about their communities, that they didn't lose lives there, and that people just dismissed, the losses in those communities. And so that was our goal. And we made relatively large grants. The average grant size was about $850,000. Many of them were $1 million, $1.2 million. But there were things like the North Lawndale Employment Network to help them finish their new headquarters. The North Austin Community Center, which is now hosting a number of regional sports activities, but has free programs for kids. And I think they have now exceeded their 3,000 kids that they were hoping to serve in their first year. So, I mean, they were things that I am so proud of, because I believe that they will have a lasting impact in their communities. And one of the things I'll just say this, that the thing that I felt most strongly about, having worked at Chicago United and really understanding that people often who have the best ideas aren't listened to, we didn't go in and tell communities, this is what you need to do. We actually wanted to hear from communities, what were you doing that was stalled by COVID that we can help you complete? We don't need to invent for you what your community needs. You know what your community needs. Tell us what you were doing and let us help you complete the project. And that's really the approach that we took. And I think people felt like they were heard and that they were valued.
I was just going to ask you, how did you guys choose who got the grants? And boom, there it is. Yeah.
Well, and it was a big process. I mean,
I bet. I'm sure you had a ton of applicants that you weren't able to help, that you probably wanted to.
And some of it was, we actually did our due diligence in all of the communities, and we went out and did an open process to hear from people about what they knew was happening in their communities. So we didn't make people come and apply. We actually did the research in communities to understand what was going on. And then we researched the projects, and then we invited them to apply. So
and then
we
did that all in 2 years.
Yeah, so that we, by the time we asked someone to apply, we were pretty sure that they were in a good position to get a grant. So our goal was to say yes. Our goal was not to say no, like invite 20 people and we're going to give one a grant. Was for us to do the homework, to really understand what's going on. And then by the time that we asked them to apply, what we were asking them for was to really look at their capital stack, to look at their business plan, to look at how they were going to succeed. And if there were things that we saw that looked like maybe they were stopping points that were going to prevent their success, then we helped them think through what they needed to do to get to success. So it was a very, very different grant making process than most.
I mean, you know, you think about grants, right? The grants there, people have to know about it to apply to it. And, you know, a lot of the times you might get people in a very similar type of pool applying for the same grant, right? Because there's only certain people know about it. So to completely flip the script on it and to go into communities, search for those organizations, and then I mean, it's so genius that I'm like, why don't people do this all the time? Because it does take more legwork for you guys. But I mean, instead of going through applicant after applicant and you know, researching them and all that, you're already like, no, we want XYZ, we want you. It's incredible.
And you know, there were some that we made grants to that they just couldn't make it all happen. It wasn't 100% success rate, but it was probably 90.
That's insane. I mean, you think about something like, you know, like angel investors, if you get 10%, that's like an amazing thing to have, you know. So the fact that you're 90, even 75, I would have been like, that's
I know.
incredible. You know, half would have been great. So to save like 90% of that money. And the other 10%, I'm sure, like you said, they try their hard, but some things just, we can't foresee all future roadblocks or what's going to happen.
And I think one of the most exciting pieces about this is we really did believe that if you had good anchors in a community, like a community center like Poder built, or North London Employment Network, or Latinos Progresando, that when people in the community start coming to those centers, the little businesses surrounding them, the little coffee shops, the little tiendas, would get business. And we know that in a lot of communities, the dollars leak out, right? People are employed there. They spend money, but often there's no place for them to spend money in their community. And so they go outside of their community. So the little money that's in the community actually leaks out. So we wanted to measure what would happen when you had a good community anchor. Did more business happen for those local businesses? And we have an evaluation process, and the Chicago Community Trust will report out on this. But we actually were measuring what happened within a mile of these community anchors. So we worked with a number of organizations, with Loyola kind of heading this up, but MasterCard data. So we worked with MasterCard to get the data. So we actually know how much more was being spent both on debit cards and credit cards within those communities. And some of the numbers are really, really spectacular, which tells you that when you invest in the community, the people in the community will stay in their community and spend their dollars there. But you've got to give them a way to and a reason to.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That's why it was such a great opportunity to do that work.
Oh my gosh. That's like, what has been since you were able to do that, so that's 2020, 2021, or to 2022?
I retired a year ago.
Right. I remember that whole thing. Where do we see these businesses now, and like these people now? Like, how's in the last 2 years? I mean, is it maintaining? Have they grown? Like, you know, most of them said. You said,
yeah. So, you know, things like there's a yoga studio in South Shore where, you know, that wasn't even available to go and do yoga in South Shore. Her studio is doing really well. And it's not only is it a yoga studio, but she's created community space and brightened up a corner where people are, you know, doing well. Brown Sugar Bakery
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Brown Sugar Bakery is another organization. You know, it's a woman-owned business with a socially important mission.
Yes.
And they are expanding their operations and doing, really well.
We had her mother on.
Oh, did you?
Yes, we had her, and she was talking to us about it. So
so, in Justice of the Pies, I mean, but bigger enterprises like the North Austin Community Center. I mean, they are doing really well. And so I think we have felt very good about the vast majority of the investments that we made.
Okay.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard, I'm sure, looking back at your career and picking a favorite moment, but please tell us why this is your favorite moment.
I know. Don't
worry, I had it
ready. Look at all cheeky with comments.
Right.
That was one of our members is a good friend of Common. And I had said, we need some star power to get the attention of CEOs to think about our issues in a different way. We keep doing CEO sessions, and it's not always very exciting for them to go and talk to each other about this stuff. And I'm a big fan of Common, and I was like, boy, you could get Common. He goes, well, I know him. And I'm like, oh, okay then. How do we make that work? And so we were very fortunate, and Common was incredibly gracious, and his team, was wonderful. And I think one of the things that I enjoyed about it, when I do an interview, I really research, and I listened to a lot of his music, and I actually had the opportunity to talk with his mom before I did the interview, so that I knew some things that I could really ask him. And so it was one of the favorite moments, because I think we got the attention of CEOs in a different way. He spoke to them with such authenticity that it had a big impact. And it was the time of Colin Kaepernick, when and he was taking the knee, and it was so controversial. And Common was just so wonderful about explaining to the CEOs about how he felt about it. And he said, look, I love football, but what is being said is so important to me that I'm willing to give up something I love to support. So at the time, he wasn't watching NFL games, because he was like, sometimes when something is right, we have to stand up, and this is right. And I just thought he was so good about it. So it was one of my favorite moments, because I mean, how many I'm like, it's not like I hang with Common. So
wait, this isn't you guys every Friday night?
Yeah, every Friday night, a little table with the flowers on it. No, but it was a wonderful stage, and it was a lot of fun, and he was a very gracious guest.
I've heard so much about just the work he does in communities. It is just one of those, I mean, he's more than an artist, right? He's I don't know, he's a movement. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like there are some people that their persona, right, is bigger than their art.
I agree.
He is someone that, you just know that he gives back and that, and especially to Chicago. So you see that, and I was like, oh, of course you interviewed Common.
Yeah, so it was I have to admit that was a really fun time.
That's good.
Any other celebrities that you're hiding out?
I'm just hanging out with. Yeah.
Have you hung out with Michelle Obama too? I mean, who?
We actually did honor Michelle Obama.
I told you I would get something random.
We did. And
of course, that's amazing.
The most fun thing was that I had a friend. I was part of Leadership Greater Chicago, and it was the class of '94. So that tells you. And a friend who worked with Michelle at City Hall, Michelle, like I'm hanging out with her, Mrs. Obama, when at City Hall, when my friend got pregnant and was having her baby shower, she invited Michelle. It was one of her friends from work. Mm-hmm. And so I sat next to Michelle through the whole baby shower. And then I met her again when we honored her at Chicago United. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Wow.
And now I'm on the Chicago committee of the Obama Presidential Center. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. So I've been doing that for a while and really been an ambassador for because I am so thrilled, and I'm so thrilled at the way that they designed the building, and that the major part of the building faces south and west. It doesn't face, downtown. It faces south and west. And I love the way that they were so thoughtful about so much of it. And it turns out those of us who have been early supporters and advocates for the center will have some little block of place where our names are inscribed. And so I'm really excited about it.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's so cool. So what's
excited?
So you didn't mention that. What other things are you involved, being retired? So wait, what was the thing that you said? You're not retired. You're
rewired.
You're rewired.
I love it. I love it.
I'm still busy. I'm just not 9 to 5.
Yeah. So with this busyness, because obviously, you're still doing philanthropic work. You're still you have your voice and your foot in a lot of things. What kind of things have you shifted to, or will something like this, and then also become a bigger part of in your not so free time?
Yeah. On the professional side, I'm still an entrepreneur. So I still have a business in which I'm a joint venture concessionaire at O'Hare with Hudson News and Gifts. So it's the Hudson Group.
I shop there all the time. So
yes,
that's it.
Thank you.
Big supporter.
Very much. And so I really enjoy that organization because over time, they are very committed to employing people and then developing their talent. And so I one of the organizations I'm proud to be part of that joint venture. I'm on the board of the Field Foundation, which racial equity is ingrained in the Field Foundation. And so I've been on that board since 2008 and really love the mission and love the work that the Field Foundation does. I'm on the board of the Mather Foundation, which is dedicated to aging well. So we have a research institute that does some of the most important research in the country with university partners all over the country, but really thinking about how people age, how they age in planned living communities, and how they age well in place. So those are the things that are kind of like on the professional side. And then on the personal side, it's, I have great friends. I have wonderful people in my life. Phaedra knows that one very special, wonderful person in my life. I have my mom who just turned 95 and
I love that woman.
And I have a 21-month-old puppy that I spend a lot of time with.
Yeah,
my pup.
What kind of puppy?
It's a Lagotto Romagnolo. I know.
Yep.
It is an Italian dog. It is related to the poodle. Okay. And it's the truffle hunting dog. It's the original truffle hunting dog.
Okay. I've heard about those dogs. So are you going to go on any truffle adventures with your dog?
No, but it's really interesting. I live near Lincoln Park, near the driving range. And she loves golf balls.
You live very close to me, yeah.
She loves golf balls, and she can smell them. There'll be like a big mound of grass, and she can go boom right in there, and she comes out with a golf ball. So I really do believe that she has super scent powers.
It's incredible. Like there's what dogs can do. You get them getting truffles, you have them sniffing out bombs, you have them sniffing out drugs, you have them sniffing out cancer. I mean, they can some dogs smell cancer in your breath. Apparently dogs can smell when women are pregnant. All of these things, it's I personally don't know if I want to smell that well, because sometimes there's certain things I don't want to smell at all, but it's so incredible. You know what I mean? It's just so wow, what what animals can do. My dog just is here for a good time to hang out with the cat. I don't know what to tell you, but
I can't say that she is going to do anything remarkable, but she's a lot of fun.
That's all they have to do is that stuff. One question I never even asked, and I'm like, wait, I'm at the end, but I want to ask the very beginning. What inspired you to get into the work of diversity, inclusion, all of that? It's kind of a tough area, right? I'm sure it can be mentally draining. It's a tough one, right? So what inspired you to get into it?
This is the argument for allowing kids to read whatever they want to read. And when I grew up in the Lakeview area, and we didn't have a lot of money. And so during the summer, my mom would walk me to the library, and I was allowed to choose whatever I wanted to read. And my dad was a huge jazz aficionado. So I knew about, he moved up to Chicago from Texas to listen to the Black musicians here. Oh. And I remember pulling the book off the shelf of Sammy Davis Jr.'s biography, Yes, I Can, and read, I was a little kid, and I read all about the stuff that he went through. He couldn't stay in hotels, and I would talk to my dad about that, and then I read Black Like Me. I don't know why I read those things. They just interested me. And then the women's movement happened, and I graduated high school, and I literally joined the women's movement. I joined Chicago Now right out of high school. Wow. And started working on women's credit law, because 1972, you couldn't get your own credit card.
Right.
So you got your credit card in your father's name or in your husband's name, but you didn't get it in your own name.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why I gravitated there, but it is the argument for allowing kids to read what they want to read. They will find their own passion if you allow them to.
Was that okay, am I maybe thinking wrong? Was that the organization that Ida B. Wells was a part of, that she, back in the day, helped with or was that a different woman?
It was a different one.
Okay.
But the National Organization for Women was, the kind of the Betty Friedan.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
Yep.
All the women that did the work before that. I will say I do come from a family of readers. My mom's mom and her sister-in-law, they owned a bookstore. So I grew up with books. I got, I've switched to the library because I don't need to buy that many books every single year. I still buy books. I still get them as gifts. But if I'm reading 40, 50 books a year, I live right by the library. We need to go over there. But I'm pretty sure I read the autobiography of Malcolm X in middle school. I don't know why, but it was just one of those things where, and again, I had zero restrictions on what I was allowed to read. You read, Pet Sematary when you're a little too young. Well, enjoy those nightmares. You know what I mean?
Whatever. And I just don't know why people think that kids can't handle it. Kids can handle it. They make good choices if you allow them to.
But parents aren't allowing their children to make good choices because they want them to be, not every parent, but there was a long time period where parents are just no, this is the thing. And you can have choices with this specific area, but everything else is.
And I think you can put guardrails on, but what my kids can read.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's, as long as you keep, the Playboy per se, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe 50 Shades of Grey type book. But you know what I mean? But even that, if they're in middle school, whatever, that's how kids learn and they can explore. And
well, there's a whole thing about that. We won't go deep into it, but there's a whole choking thing going on now with young people.
Oh,
and that was part of 50 Shades of Grey, and it's worth. It is worth looking into as a longtime feminist. It's worth looking into what is happening now with young people, and particularly young women, accepting being choked as part of a sexual relationship.
Interesting.
And a new topic for you.
Man. And you know, also I'm sure it's younger women that haven't, you know, matured to say it's not fully consenting, right? Because
it's part of the norm rather than
exactly.
Interesting.
Nothing wrong with it, but you have to be a fully consenting adult. You need to understand what you're consenting to, and you know what I mean.
And the wrong and the right ways of doing it. That there's a whole like, it's not just it's not just simple. It's a whole thing.
And there's levels to it too.
There is.
There's somebody out here listening to you who has expertise in this area. You're going to have to get them on.
Like, hey,
but I didn't hear about that. I mean, with all the things that kids like have to do, why that? Jeez.
I know, right?
There you go. There you go. So I'd say keep 50 Shades of Grey, like hold off on that one until you understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean that's the type of. I'm like, you know, we'll keep that over there until I said middle school, maybe at least high school. But I mean, you don't want to keep kids either in a box either until they're 18 or go to college, because then you know you need to let kids kind of. But you also need to present like, hey, if you have questions about X, Y, Z, you know, you have to answer them in a judgment-free. Area.
And there's a parent that don't have that ability to do that or don't want to do that because or they're just like, no, like you're too young. It's like, well, mate, it's not about being too young anymore. It's like it's out there.
It's out there.
It's out there. I mean, my nieces know what a vagina and a penis is, so that's a start, you know, and they should. I mean, 100%. So,
whereas, I mean, Fader and I are children of the 80s where things were a little bit different. And I did ask my mom, I was like, hey, Mom, I was like, why did I have a VHS of Madonna music videos, including Like a Virgin, when I was in like kindergarten? Why did I know
I used to sing that.
She was like, you didn't know what it was. It's fine. I'm like, Mom.
Going around the grocery store singing Like a Virgin when I was 4. I mean, my mom would just look at me and be like, that's my free-spirited little 4-year-old.
And you know what? I don't think that's a problem at all.
No,
I don't think it is either. But it's just one of those things where I was like, Mom. Try. I mean, she's a great mother, but like sometimes, you know, I watched Dirty Dancing. I didn't know half the stuff that was going on. She was like, nah, it's fine.
Love Dirty Dancing.
You're just like, oh, it's about the dancing, and you knew there was like, you know, love going on, but the music and the dancing.
The abortion thing that
was I didn't get that either.
That goes right over your head when you're a kid.
And that's what they were, and the whole sock on the door and all these things, they went over my head, and they were just like, that's fine. And then we get a little older, you're like,
that's what that is about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So funny.
Well, Gloria, I have enjoyed our time so much, but I do want to, you know, final question, right? You know, hold on. We do have a quick comment here. No point of hiding it. I let my kid know what he's going to see before he saw it. So once he comes, he'll be like, that's what my dad was talking about. And that's how parenting should be, you know, when it comes to sex, drugs, alcohol, and everything in between. Like, you don't want your kid to learn from a dumbass 16-year-old. You want your kid to learn from someone that has a little bit of experience and knows what they're talking about. Or else they'll be drinking, or else they'll be drinking Tide Pods.
Exactly.
I don't even know how that's a thing.
Kids these days, but you know. So Gloria, you know, I know you're retired / rewired. Kind of like looking back on you know, kind of like the legacy of your career, things that you are doing now. What would you want people to remember you for the most? I always come with a final question of
really listening. Yeah, I would want to say, you know what, when I needed her, she really listened. Yeah, that would be it.
I know.
I feel like everything you did, you summed it up to just
the
most simple thing that so many people don't do, and that was something really incredible. You know, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you can do twice as much listening as you can speaking. Well, Gloria, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
This is so much fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
I will probably be creeping in your email because I don't live far from you at all. And I wanted to ask you a zillion more questions. So if you
I'll meet you in the backyard by the driving range.
Right.
That's what we call the
You take your dogs for a walk.
I know. But you have a great evening. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
I love her.
I know.
I love her. And I love how she just kind of casually threw in that, I'm working on, the Obama Center too. Like,
I know.
Because I was like, let me just joke about Michelle. And
no, it's part. Yeah, she's just done so. It's like, in her experience in life and the years she's been here, her story goes beyond. We spent one night. I thought we were going to have like a couple of glasses of wine. I think I spent 7 hours at her house.
Oh my God.
We just went all the way back to all the things. And you don't know, anyone, it doesn't matter where you come from, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you can start anywhere, and the support and seeking and knowing what you want to do. And like she said, reading, and then just like going for it and being just so focused and diligent about her beliefs and her values. It's just made her such a irreplaceable, remarkable woman in the workforce and in what she does for minorities, women, everyone, it's just great.
When you're having good conversation, time does fly, man, when you're having fun. And that's you can talk about serious topics, but still throw a little fun in there. But I think the one thing, and it just blows my mind that it was our parents' generation that had the freaking women's movement, right? The civil rights movement. We are not that many generations moved from the Civil War. Even less generations moved from Jim Crow. All of these women's suffrage, it's wow. And it's not even my ancestors, my grandma was around for some of this. So that would have been my great grandma would have been alive, during the Civil War, something like that. You know what I mean? All these little things where it's we've come so far, but we haven't. And is
because in 30 years, the things happening now, everyone's going to be like, oh, that was my, great, because we're going through another addition.
It's a very testy time, right? You see all the protesting because you think about, what else did our parents go through? Vietnam, right. And that was a huge time with on-campus protests. You had the Kent State campus shootings, all of these things. And, I read, I can't remember who said it, but there was something of if you're always against what the college kids are protesting, you're probably on the wrong side of history, was basically the gist of it is, you might not necessarily agree with everything, per se, but it's you need to listen, right? When a large amount of this entire generation are saying one thing, you should probably take a peek and be all right, what does this mean? What does this say? And I mean, to think about can you imagine going through the Iraq War, which never should have been a thing, but post 9/11, think about going through that if there was actually a draft.
Oh my God.
That would have been our peers getting drafted to go to war.
Yep.
To a war that a lot of us did not think we should have gone anyway. And then all of a sudden we have Vietnam. So, so if Vietnam stuff hadn't happened, would we have ever gotten rid of the draft, right? And if we go to something like 9/11, would they have tried it all these, instead of trying to get all this recruitment, would they just have drafted people? It's kind of crazy and I actually never thought about that till this exact moment, but it's holy shit, we're only just one generation off of so much stuff that went through, so much trauma. It's really like people talk about trauma being embedded in it, and it's like because you have all these major things that just kind of went boom, 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 and it pretty much everyone was affected. I mean, how can you not be, right, when you go through that? So it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy.
And she saw it all, or at least a lot of that. So
a lot of it. I mean, to think about, graduating just around the time when women couldn't even have a credit card.
God, I don't get it. It's ridiculous.
Like, I sure wouldn't have been able to get a mortgage on my own in the 70s, huh?
No, nothing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, thank you so much for bringing her on. I absolutely love her.
Goodness. She's lovable.
She's inspiring, right? I mean, it's something, hold on, let me bring my comment in. Very true. We've had more years in this country with no equal rights than we've had with equal rights. Damn. Yeah. And I would say we still don't have we have equal rights.
Ish.
But yeah, I mean, I think people are trying to take some stuff back, but it's kind of.
Got some more time.
It's a lot to think about. Yeah, it is,
It's a lot.
It is. Yeah. It is. Can I finish with a book recommendation?
The what?
Can I finish with a book recommendation?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, so I'm currently, and I'm not done yet, but I'm finishing Chain Gang All-Stars, which apparently they're already like going to turn into like, I think, I want to say a Netflix show. I'm not 100% who's picking it up or if it's been picked up, but the basic premise of the book is prisoners. You're either in prison, you're either executed or in prison for very long periods of time, which one of the models was like, they put something in you, so you're like silenced. If you speak, you get electrocuted. Or you go into a program where you're going gladiator style and battling somebody out every single week. But it is like, it really goes into just a lot of the thought about what prisons are, why we lock people up, how is corporate punishment, like how we view all this. And it really is making me, it makes you think a lot. And because it's not just a simple battle it out every week. He puts like little footnotes in things of like, did you know that using tear gas is against like Geneva Convention for things of war, but we use it for riot control. So you can't use it in war, but you can use it in riots. Like all of these like little interesting things. And so
say that name of the book one more time, or the author.
Chain Gang All-Stars. Don't remember the author's name. It's a younger Black male. He was on, I think his debut novel like won a bunch of stuff. So it's the second one. This is only the second one, but like just like thinking of equality, kind of that whole thing of like, it's another topic we can get to a different day of like how there's inequality in the prison system. And
that's
the prison to pipeline and all this, or school to prison pipeline and all these like social things. But I love something that just takes one piece of social commentary and then blows it up. But it really, I like it. It can be a little like gruesome at some points, but it's not just a gruesome book to be a gruesome book. There is a lot of like backstory to it, and it does make some characters unlikable in the sense of like, hey, this guy was like a rapist. And like a murder rapist, but you're still like, but
he's human.
He's a human, right? So where do we draw the line of?
Well, this is going to be
punishment. How do we do this? And there's no like wrong. There's no right answer. There's a lot of wrong answers, but there's no right answer. So I got like 50 pages left. I'm probably going to finish it tonight. And I believe I heard some people say that he's like either shopping it for like a TV show or has already been bought. I gotta look that up. I want to like finish it, but it'll be good because it goes into all the different protesters of it, the people that started it, the people in it. It has like different viewpoints of people.
Wow.
So good. One of the best books I've read this year.
Okay. I got it down and yes, Crooked.
Yes, Giddy. I have I have a lot of opinion. I'm not just a sports girl. So, and a lot of my stuff that I really get excited about is social justice. And you know, making sure that there's space for everyone in the room. And like, let's, instead of just saying, I envision, you know, I like to think about what our perfect society would look like. And that also means, how do we deal with the social deviance, right? How do we deal with people that don't do, you know, what they're supposed to do? Like, and then what led them to doing that as well. But then also, yes, people that there's something messed up with them and blah, 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 blah. I like to get into the topics that aren't always the nice, you know, peaches and sunshine and rainbow and poodles and everything lovely. Like, no, let's fucking talk about
I might have someone else. I might have someone we can bring on, because you will. I love her. You will like her.
I absolutely love it. And, you know, I will say with that comment, that is the perfect time to say,
this has been a Chicago Clubhouse Network production.